Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to talk about Wavetone, which is a synthesizer that's within the Digitone II. Specifically, it's actually called a machine, and what that means in electron language is every track has a corresponding machine that makes music. It's kind of part of why it's called Electron Music Machines. That's the official name of the company. But all right, so let's go through. I'm going to play a track real quick, and I used Wavetone on this in a couple different ways. So let's just check it out, and then we'll go through it. Okay, so kind of a different tone, has a lot of FM elements to it, but I'll show you a couple patches I did real quick. So let me load up. Let's see. So this is a pad sound. Let me go ahead. Okay, so let's just play a couple chords. Okay, and the tone, and then this one I had right here, which is the little ARP. Whoops, let me just go out of that and tap that. So it's just a plucky little sound, actually, that I made. So I made a pluck and a pad is kind of what I did. Nothing real fancy, but all right. So let's go and just start from scratch. So on the synth page here, or the machine page, let's go ahead and clear out what we have there. So if you hold track and you hit clear, that'll just clear out and set defaults for everything that you have, including the machine that you currently have set. How do you get to machines? Well, there's a machine label here. You hold function and you tap synthesizer, and that shows you the different machines that are available. This is one of the ones. I'm just going to talk about this one, and I'll probably make a separate video for each one is kind of where I'm going, but we'll see. If people like this one, then I'll do more. All right, so let's start with what is this thing? Well, it's got two oscillators, and both of those oscillators are based on a wavetable, but I wouldn't call it a wavetable synthesizer. You work with it differently. The next column over is phase distortion, and that's per each oscillator. So I'll show you what that sounds like. And the next one is level, and the first thing is just setting the tune. So they're in two rows here is the whole idea. And then on the second page, you have different tuning options. You can set which wavetable you're getting. There's a different collection of mods that will change. And then there's drift and some phase reset options. And I'm going to go through these in more detail. I'm just giving an overview. And then this page is kind of this noise modeler that you can introduce. So those are the three pages. So let's go through and just hear this thing. So here, when you start, you've just got your basic sine wave. And let's go ahead and just go through the waveforms here. So you can see that we go from a sine all the way up to a square wave. Pretty standard stuff. What's kind of cool though is if I stop on square, and I'm going to turn the other one off just so we only hear. So we're only hearing the top row now. And what I'm going to do is change the phase distortion of this. You're going to recognize the sound. And it's kind of classic pulse width modulation there. But what's cool is you can do that on any waveform. So let me go to closer to a sawtooth. you have the same capability. On different waves, you'll get different effects. Let me jump to page 2, and I'm going to change the wavetable for the top wave 1. So I'm just going to go to page 2. I'm going to turn this. There's primitive, which is what you just saw, which is going through primitive waveforms. This one is harmonic waveforms, which is similar, but it has a lot more harmonics. That's why it's called that. So you listen to that. If you pick something like that, like a dirty square wave, now when you change your phase distortion, oops, that's volume. So you can start to get, like, there's this additional kind of high-pitched fuzz that you're getting in there. So there's different ways to get tonalities. The second wave is, a copy of the first one. So let's shift it down. Let's turn up the volume to the same, about 100. And then let's turn its octave down. So we just do that. I'm going to go through those. Same collection. Let's put a square on the bottom. And let's thin it out. So we'll kind of... So just with the phase distortion, what I find is you can kind of pick a wave and you can kind of just play with those and get all sorts of stuff going on. Later on, we'll hook these up and mod them so you can start to see how you use them, not just statically, but how you can get them to make different sounds. Okay, on to page 2. So again, you have a wavetable for each. So we could go back to this first page and you would see by me changing the second value, this bottom wave is changing. That's just something you got to keep in mind. All right, let's start with offset. This is a fixed hertz offset, which is really interesting. So it's not pitch. It sounds like pitch if you play one note. Okay, so let me change this. And you hear it offset it. But when you play different notes, it has a little bit more. So if you go to a low note, you really start to hear. So what I find with this setting is that low notes are impacted more, which doesn't intuitively sound like what you would expect. You would think that setting a fixed offset would, affect the higher pitches more, but it's pretty much that it's just more audible in lower notes. So that's kind of cool because you can just, let me just tune them a little bit. So you get these little, get different beats. So you can get kind of an analog warmth just by detuning, but it is a different detuning, and it's called linear offset versus just regular. Now, I find that I use drift a lot, so let me play a chord. There we go. And drift only takes effect after you press a key. So if you hold it, you'll turn this, and you'll say, why isn't it doing anything? So you just, you have to hit another note, and you'll say, whoa, I went too far. Come back. Okay, maybe right in that area. So I really like drift. I think that's a cool, and all that's doing, of course, is just going, each oscillator is just being kind of meanderingly detuned a little bit, which I always like that sound. All right, so let's go through the, let's do phase reset next. Let me turn drift off just so we can hear this easily. So right now, phase reset is on, meaning that every time I press anytime I play something, the wave is starting exactly at a phase of 0. So you're not, it doesn't sound different. Now, if I change this to running, basically, you're going to hear a little bit of difference. Okay. I don't know if you heard a big difference there, but there is a difference. Now, when you go to random, you'll hear even more difference. So random can be a good choice if you just want to add, like if you've got a plucky sound and you just want it to kind of meander around a little bit and sound a little more natural. So let me go through mod. So what mod is cool. So the first thing is it does ring mod, speaking of mod, and ring modulation takes, so ring modulation can be musical, but it's also can be atonal depending on the difference between the frequencies and how compatible they are between the two oscillators. Because what it's doing is, that's because I have the phase. Let me turn the phase. That way it'll sound the same each time. Okay. What it does is ring modulation takes the delta difference between the frequencies, and then it uses the carrier frequency, adds and subtracts that amount. So you kind of end up with a high and a low. So it can have this effect of sounding like things are moving up and down at the same time. Maybe I can demonstrate that. We'll see. So I'm going to change the pitch so you're going to hear this thing go. Let me play a chord first just to show you that it's, right now it is musical, right? You can actually hear a chord out of it. But watch what happens when I change some of the pitches here. And you hear it going up and down. So that can be a cool transition to use. And if you have it just a little bit off, it makes a cool phasing. Oh, maybe that's not cool, but... All right. Okay, so next mod. So that was one. This is fixed mod, which is 100 hertz offset on each. So, or on, yeah, each. So what's interesting about this is that it has more of an impact on low notes than high notes, which actually intuitively didn't make sense to me, because you would think that just an offset would have more impact on higher notes, but it seems to have almost the opposite. So if I, this gets very atonal, so you hear it gets really crunchy. Let me go down and... Yeah, so it's... Okay, I'll stop playing that because you're like, ooh, I don't know. But anyway, this is more like if you're doing a special effect or you're doing like a percussive sound, you know, sometimes it can be really good to have an atonal bass that you can filter off of. Okay, the last one is hard sync. And hard sync is interesting because it uses the first tune to be the change for... So let me play this and see if I can get this familiar sound that you've heard with hard sync. There it is. So that one's a really good one to put a mod on. So I'll leave that there, and then we can maybe come back and I'll do that. And obviously you can get phase in there too. We'll mess with those here in just a second. All right, so noise. Okay, so this has a whole noise kind of, you know, the setup here. So let me add noise first off. So now you can hear the tone plus the noise. You can obviously adjust how much noise you want. What's really cool is it has its own envelope. So you could say, I really want to fade in the noise. And I want to fade out the noise on release. Actually, though, I have to have a... Sorry, I got to have an envelope that has more release on it so we can hear it. There we go. All right. So... so you have an envelope that controls the noise, which is cool. And then you also have its own filter. So if, let's say I just want high pitched noise, I want just kind of white noise, or if I want lower. Actually, in this case, there's not a lot low frequencies, but a few in there. There we go. Okay. So that's cool, so you can filter. And then this guy, you have different types of noise and then character. And that's that. I'm going to change the character knob so you can hear this. And let me turn off, just so we can just focus on this. I'm going to turn off the oscillators just so you can hear the noise. Some of these are cool. This one's just a nice, crunchy little thing. Then you get into the full. Okay. And the next noise type is tuned noise. Oh, I should show before I go to that. Like if I play a chord with this, you know, you're not going to hear anything tonal. They're all the same. Okay. When you go to tuned noise, you're hearing the influence of the notes, and then you can change this guy. This guy's pretty fun, actually. All sorts of cool stuff. And then the last one is sample and hold noise. You notice this one is has the same character, the digital character, but it doesn't have the tone, or it's not tuned. Which again, like depending on what you're doing. Okay, so we could maybe use a little bit of, say you want to add, I like the first guy here. We'll put some grain noise and have him fade in, and then we'll put our tone here. Noise is kind of weird because you hear it, but you kind of don't. Like if you know it's there, like, you know, you saw me add it, but it's always interesting in patches sometimes how subtle, how just a little bit of noise can add just the right amount of grit and kind of make it, like there, it's hard to hear, but I guarantee it's there. All right, so let's do a bit of changing things around with mods, and then and we'll see where we end up. I'll leave that noise in there for right now, but let's take the phase distortion, and let's make LFO1 do the phase distortion for oscillator 1. And so let's just hear what that sounds like, which I love. I kind of don't like the noise now. I'm going to turn it off. I just want to hear yeah. All right, let's do the same for the second oscillator. Let's go in and put phase distortion on the second oscillator. So let's do that. Okay, and we'll just do something a little bit slower. And we'll bring him down an octave, obviously. There we go. Okay, getting some cool stuff. And remember, we are on the hard sync mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the tune of oscillator 1 with the third oscillator. So we're just going to do that and do oscillator 1 tune, give it a little offset. That's too fast. We want it to be. Yeah, there we go. That's one note. No effects. Let me check. No effects. One time I said that in a video and I went in there, there's a lot of effects turned on, but anyway. All right, so we got this guy. He's kind of moving around and doing stuff. And obviously you have three LFOs, and you can add that onto pretty much every parameter. So there's a lot of depth here. And you have to be selective with those because you don't have like 50 of them. You have 3, but you can do a lot with those. And if you're a little bit new to Electron gear and you're probably like, well, what do you mean? Let's go and take the first oscillator is mapped to phase distortion on oscillator 1, right? But let's change the speed of this to be 100 cycles, or excuse me, 1,000 cycles a second. So now, let me actually do it this way, yeah. So that's 1,000 cycles a second. So you can kind of do crazy stuff. In this case, I don't think that sounds great, so I'll put it back to what it was. There we go. All right, so yeah, and I'm not going to go through everything in LFOs. I shouldn't have started that, because if I did, then it would be another... Maybe I should do it. If everybody wants, I can do a video on that. But either way, so page 1, the 2 oscillators, and then page 2 is a lot of detune, and also with the tables and the different mod modes and phase and drift. Maybe I wonder if a little drift to put this. And we got to add some effects onto this. Actually, I'll do that before the end of the video. And we'll put a little noise in here just because. There we go. Okay. Now let's put some effects on here. Add some reverb. You hear it? There we go. A little delay. Yeah. Okay, and then some chorus. There we go. Now let's play a chord. Ooh, too much. That's one thing about, I always find that fascinating when you have a voice that sounds awesome for one note. Like that sounds good. Like you could just use that as a drone right there and just chop it up or do whatever you want to do with it. But once you make those big tones and then you play a chord with them, they sound horrible. Sometimes they'll sound better high. Let's see. Let's go really high. Okay, sounds a little better. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and stop the video there. If anybody has any questions, just send me a comment, and I hope this was helpful for you. Thanks a lot. Bye.